in terms of this pandemic, like I've been thinking about you a lot during this pandemic because it's exactly as you said, sort of like exposing the failures of neoliberal capitalism and also what happens when you hollow out the government and so it can't function anymore. What do you feel like? I don't want you to play Nostradamus here, but you're so good at it sometimes of playing this sort of like, what do you think might happen? And what are the Naomi Damas, as we say. But what do you think?
I should have a podcast.
Exactly, please. You need a crazy purple background. You need a hat. What do you foresee happening, especially in the United States? 500,000 people dead. We still don't have things like, universal health care. There are a lot of lessons to be learned. I guess I'm wondering, like, as you see the balance of forces, as you see sort of where we're at, like, what do you think? What lessons should we not let our electeds, the powerful forget that we need to be learning coming out of this? And or just sort of general thoughts on like where you feel like we're going from here. I feel like there's a before and after of this pandemic, especially in the States.
Yeah. I think this is a moment where, just from a movement perspective, I think that we need more communication between movements. We need more strategy sharing between movements. I think it is very clear that the Biden administration is, despite some like early good signs, they are reverting back to Democrats as usual and are going to lead us straight left to their own devices. This will be a one-term administration, and we will be facing some sort of resurgent Trumpian project, perhaps without Trump, perhaps much more threatening. But just left to their own devices, they are, not going to do. They're going to screw people over on the minimum wage. They're going to screw people over on their stimulus checks. There's going to be this kind of militarism, but don't think about it and don't talk about it. And it's just like, I watch Tucker Carlson occasionally just to really scare myself, because it's very interesting how he is more and more kind of playing this explicitly anti-corporate piece of the populist card. And you can just see every way that the Democrats will fail, they are poised to profit from. They're not going to go back to being the Republican Party that is just openly the party of big business. They are going to refine what Trump did in the economic nationalism, standing up to the globalists, all of that. And we can see examples of this in Europe with Marine Le Pen and the way that whole discourse gets folded together. So we need to be really strategic in the outside of the Dem. We need to be very clear that we are not the Democratic Party. We are not an extension of the Democratic Party. And we just can't let them fuck it up, because they will fuck it up. And that is going to require a much more confrontational kind of activism than we've seen so far. I think it's exciting that the squad is growing. I hope Nina Turner, I think it's important to get Nina elected. Having Nina in there will be really significant. Just more coordination inside the squad in terms of putting forward what an actual vision of a Green New Deal, what the different pieces of legislation, housing, care, energy, all of it. Like we need the legislation to be pushing for. I don't know. I'm frightened, to be honest with you. Like I think we've got a very narrow window here. But where I am heartened is I don't believe that we're repeating the 2008 mistakes of just like, maybe they need more time. And like, the one thing I like about Biden is that nobody really likes Biden.
Yeah, totally.
It's like an empty space. There's none of this, maybe he's my boyfriend stuff with Obama, it's like very clear. And I think Jill
Biden doesn't like Biden that much.
Clearly not.
But that's healthy. It's good not to have a crush on the head of the most powerful imperial state in the world.
But I mean, it's the perfect example of why, for me, the pandemic is like, you've been gifted. Trump was gifted an opportunity to do something. He could have had 4 more years. Are you kidding me? Easily, if he didn't fuck up the pandemic, in my opinion. I think it's very clear that if so many, especially seniors in the United States, weren't affected by this, he would get 4 more years. That's where he lost. And Biden, unless, yay, floating down lit candles to commemorate the dead. That actually does matter to me. But what matters even more is really like boldly stepping to this historic moment in a way that is going to not only tackle the virus of the, of COVID, but also of fascism. And I don't see him rising to that occasion either on just doing the basic things. I mean, I'm like, can we get some internationalism here too? Like, let's look at other countries that have successfully stopped the spread of COVID. Can we,
No, but that's key. I mean, I think American activists and journalists would do well to talk about the rest of the world a hell of a lot more. And it's the most powerful argument you can make that talk about Canada more. Canada's not perfect, but it's a pretty damn good argument that you have very close by to make the point that this was not inevitable.
Right.
Talk about China. I mean, I think Americans are always very inward looking, and it's something I'm Canadian and American, dual citizen, but I always saw my role as like trying to get Americans to like look out beyond the border a little bit and remember that there are other people out there. And I think that during the Bush years, because of the wars, there was some of that. Right. But the Trump years have been very much like, okay, we are the most interesting show by far. Right. Like, we're just going to watch ourselves. And the rest of you are not that interesting. And that really needs to stop. We need to talk about vaccine nationalism. And we also need to talk about where countries are doing things a lot better and use that as a tool. Absolutely. Bernie does a good job of that, and he gets made fun of for it. But he does believe other countries exist.
Maybe once we stop being the biggest train wreck on Earth, like, we can start looking outwards. So I feel like, because it's like, let's be real, the rest of the world was also looking at us in this time too, being like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing that I think is important, is for the world to stop seeing, the United States as, I don't think it does, but I think there's a stupid fascination. Once there was an article where it was like interviewing people around the world, just being like, I feel really bad for Americans, like in the middle of the pandemic, about all the, like, our lack of response and Trump. I remember there was like someone in Thailand in a village going like, oh man. It's very humbling and important. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good. Promise.